Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. National home prices continue to increase for at least 4 big reasons. There's also a hindrance that's getting so bad that it could keep more price growth in check. We look at why single-family rent growth is increasing. Then we focus on one particular metro area that could be America's best cash flow real estate market and why today on Get Rich Education.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Whitney, England to Mount Whitney, California, and across 188 nations worldwide. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, and this is Get Rich Education. National home prices continue to increase, and no one knows what mortgage rates are going to do. There is one factor that could slow the home price growth party down. It could be impeded a little by these rising insurance costs. Now, in years past, do you know how many American homeowners decided that they were just going to skip insurance and not buy it so that they don't have to pay the premium? Any idea what percent? Well, the longer-term norm is that 5 to 8% of homeowners skipped insurance. They just said, we'll handle any risk and not buy it. Maybe that's sort of like not using a case for your phone, perhaps. Which I don't actually. I never use a case for my phone, but I do have insurance on all of my properties. Well, the Wall Street Journal was just reporting that the number of homeowners that have decided to forego insurance has increased. Okay, the longer-term historic number is 5 to 8% that decided to skip insurance. And now, amidst insurance premiums that in a lot of places have risen faster than inflation, that proportion of those that skip homeowners insurance is now from 5 to 8% up to 12%. Yeah, 12% of homeowners electing to skip insurance. And they're going to be those people that are free and clear of a mortgage. And now, if you have a mortgage, you must have property insurance. The Wall Street Journal also found that it's mostly lower income people that forego it, lower income people that skip the insurance. Now, of course, homeowner borrowers, you have to eat that premium increase. If you're a homeowner borrower, they have to eat that. You're going to remember that just 7 episodes ago on episode 461, I went into a lot of detail on the areas of the nation that do have skyrocketing insurance premiums. And if you're a landlord in any of those markets, you can pass along the hot potato, because you can raise your rents in order to offset that. But primary residence homeowners, they cannot do that. They cannot pass along the hot potato. Homeowners have to eat the hot potato, and sometimes that hot potato can burn the roof of your mouth. That's why the proportion of those that skip insurance has about doubled. And also, some areas have become uninsurable if you want a new policy. Think of some of the forest fire-prone areas out west. And, you know, the eastern half of the nation, they can get forest fires too, of course, but east of the Mississippi, it stays more humid and you get more rain. That's why it's just not as much of a problem in the eastern half of the U.S. Well, you've taken my guidance to heart, and you sure are passing along the insurance hot potato, raising the rent on your tenants. Here's some evidence, because John Berg's Real Estate and Consulting shows us that in the latest stats, single-family rents are up 6.5% year over year. Yeah, single-family rentals are also seeing higher occupancy and lower vacancy. And that 6.5% annual rent growth rate in single families, that's worth watching if you forecast inflation, because, of course, that does make up part of the CPI, like Rick Sharga and I recently discussed. Now, single-family rentals, they are roughly 1/4 of America's rental housing stock. And this differs, by the way, from the rent growth on larger apartment buildings. Apartment building rent growth is slow due to so much new construction of larger apartment buildings where they're just still not building enough single-family rentals in so many markets. So With this low, really just awful affordability for wannabe homeowners, what's happening in this era is that single families, they're attracting quality tenants. As this affordability worsens, the quality of the single family tenant is therefore increasing. The Fred charts tell us that the median sales price of a new build home is now $437,000. $437,000. Note that that's for a new build, not existing. And home prices are up for four big reasons. It's really four major reasons that home prices are up. There is high home demand from the large millennial generation. This astoundingly scarce supply. Thirdly, there's a still pretty strong economy. And then fourthly, believe it or not, if you're new to real estate, fourthly is, yes, historically normal mortgage interest rate levels. All these things are supporting these higher and higher prices. And this scarce housing supply, that is a genuine American problem that we have here. Now, President Biden, he's tried to address it with a 5-year plan that he announced last year. And in just 2 days, Republican presidential candidates are going to take the stage in California for the second GOP primary debate. And the presidential candidates, they should be asked, what would you do about the housing shortage? That question was not asked in the first presidential debate. If I could ask them one question, yeah, it would be about housing. And our next president matters, whether Biden wins re-election or whether it's someone else. But my gosh, America spends too much time wrapped up in all this debate posturing and all this media hype over the positioning of the candidates. I mean, this has already been going on for months and months. Trump, Haley, Pence, Ramaswamy, DeSantis. Yes, the primaries are sooner, but the presidential election is still more than a full year into the future, even from this point. And this has already been going on for this long. I mean, virtually no other nation in the world drags it out for this long. It's almost a 2-year cycle of vetting these presidential candidates. Well, 2 years, that's half of a presidential term right there. My goodness. Next week, as I'll be leaning on my team for a makeshift GRE studio, I'll be joining you from Chicago, Illinois, and I will be checking out the sites and also the real estate opportunities there. And though still in Chicago land, it's typically on the Indiana side of the Illinois-Indiana line, where you'll tend to find the better real estate deals and the lower taxes. Back to this week's show. We're not talking about Chicago today. Straight ahead is this America's best cash flow real estate market. It's an area that has population and job growth, but it's slow growth. You'll be surprised with how low the property prices are. I mean, they're often below replacement cost, which is remarkable. But what that means is with today's high materials and labor and regulatory costs, it would pay more to build a new home on that site than what you can buy that completed existing for home today that was built decades ago. And I've walked these very neighborhoods. A lot of them are nice. They're not in war zone areas. The city has a great base of distribution jobs. It's a sector where it's hard to outsource distribution jobs over to a less developed nation because those jobs need to be fixed right there where you need to move the goods. So in this city, they are building fulfillment centers, that's warehousing, and this highly investor advantaged place is also a state capital. So they have another base of government jobs that are not going away. I'm talking to an experienced principal in this market that offers freshly renovated property to out-of-market investors like you. That's next. I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education. GRE listeners can't stop talking about their service from Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They've provided our tribe with more loans than anyone. They're truly a top lender for beginners and veterans. It's where I go to get my own loans for single-family rental property up to 4 plexes. So start your pre-qualification and you can chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even deliver your custom plan for growing your real estate portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, I'll just tell you, for the most passive part of my real estate investing, personally, I put my own dollars with Freedom Family Investments because their funds pay me a stream of regular cash flow. and returns are better than a bank savings account, up to 12%. Their minimums are as low as $25K. You don't even need to be accredited for some of them. It's all backed by real estate, and I kind of love how the tax benefit of doing this can offset capital gains and your W-2 job's income. And they've always given me exactly their stated return, paid on time, so it's steady income, no surprises, while I'm sleeping or just doing the things I love. For a little insider tip, I've invested in their Power Fund. To get going on that, text family to 66866. Oh, and this isn't a solicitation. If you want to invest where I do, just go ahead and text family to 66866.
This is Paradigm Life's Patrick Donahoe. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Hey, well, I'd like to welcome in one of our GRE marketplace providers in such an investor advantage geography. That is in Little Rock, Arkansas. Brian, we're going to be listening to one of the voices of GRE marketplace today. Hey, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thank you, Keith. I appreciate being here for the second time. This is great. Great catching up with you.
Well, that's right. Now, it's been a few years since you and I got together in person in Little Rock, Arkansas, and we toured the market and we walked a number of properties. Brian, I think the thing that stands out most to me with that trip to Little Rock, where I spent the day with you, is that my baggage arrived late. Now, we had good accommodations at the Capitol Hotel, kind of the stately, nice hotel right in the center of downtown, but my luggage to Little Rock arrived about 20 hours late. I've had really good luck with luggage all my life, but I didn't this time. And my most enduring memory maybe is that I had to go running in street shoes. And I still remember near the end of my run, I was running over the bridge that spans the Arkansas River between North Little Rock and Little Rock, looking down while I was running at these slightly dressy black shoes on my feet, thinking, my gosh, it's a miracle that my feet don't hurt.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember, Keith. I remember piecing it together, too. You didn't come right out and just tell me. You'd mentioned your bag had been lost, and then you mentioned that you went for a run that morning, and I thought, what did you run in? So, yeah, you described basically running in your loafers from the day before. So I was like, this guy's a real machine from the great north down here. So I was impressed.
Yes, and you're probably also wondering, did you really have to go running, right? That's the other thing.
Well, right.
Hey, you and I were just discussing this great media clip that we watched there from the local news there in Little Rock. This tells us quite a bit about the economic drivers in Little Rock, as well as the low median home price there in the Little Rock area. Let's listen to this together. This is about 2 minutes in length, and then we'll come back to comment.
We turn now to the national recognition that 3 communities in Central Arkansas are receiving. Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway ranked in the top 10 places for young professionals to live by Forbes.
And some great news. Channel 7's Brenda Lipinski is on your side tonight. She joins us now live in our studio. Brenda, tell us a little bit about these rankings.
Yes, Chris. So Forbes Advisor analyzed 99 of 100 largest cities and found that Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway had great opportunities for young people. Little Rock, North Little Rock, and Conway named top 10 best places for young professionals to live by Forbes Advisor, and some agree.
I think that there's no doubt here in Arkansas, Central Arkansas, that we foster some of the greatest minds and talents.
The criteria for the ranking included employment and pay, housing affordability, lifestyle, and cost of living. North Little Rock Chamber of Commerce saying investment in young people is crucial for the area.
They're the next leaders, so we need to make sure that we continue to recruit them and develop them, because they're going to be the next people on our board of directors. They're going to be the next city council members.
Mayor Frank Scott Jr., who's a millennial, says good public education and jobs are a must.
We've seen historic job growth of close to 10,000 new jobs.
Young professionals saying there's a ton of reasons why they like the area.
The community.
Affordability. Every single time I connect with someone and I'm able to find a new opportunity, whether it be inside of work and with my career or outside of work with just having fun.
And for the future, some hoping the state will create policy that will continue to attract more young people.
And think about the ways that we can continue to attract diverse professionals and how policy can impact people's image of the state and of the area specifically.
Now, Forbes Advisor also says that the areas are evolving into an entrepreneurial and innovation hub, which may also attract young professionals. On your side, I'm Brenda Lipinski.
Okay, Brenda, thanks so much. Forbes also likes the cost of living in Central Arkansas, where the median home price is about $200,000.
All right, so that's what the media is reporting, but you're right there. You're the boots on the ground. So tell us more about population growth and job creation and just overall the market vibe and the drivers there in Central Arkansas.
We have continued to see growth here. I think it was mentioned that over 10,000 jobs created in just the last 5 years. One of the things that stands out here too is really driving that growth is that we're kind of known as a distribution hub or an up-and-coming distribution hub. A lot of that has to do with our geography and where we're located very centrally in the United States. And we're at the crossroads of two major interstates, I-40 and I-30. And so we've seen, in just the last 5 years, a very large Amazon facility put in, actually 3 different fulfillment centers put in. So that's said to have brought in around 2,000 jobs just right there. Then we've seen other big retailers come in like Lowe's and Ace Hardware and Dollar General, and they've all built distribution fulfillment centers here as well. And then even still, we've seen growth with manufacturing moving into our Riverport here. It was just announced this year that a big Trex facility, they manufacture decking materials and from environmentally friendly sources. And they're putting a major operation here, and they were drawn here for the location and proximity to the interstate. So those things really are driving us right now. A lot of our growth is accelerated by this sort of fulfillment, warehousing, distribution space. We have other drivers too. In just the last few years, we're very diverse in the economy here, but we have a large tech company here called Aptigee. They were created right here in Little Rock and have really accelerated their growth. I believe they're set to get up to around 800 jobs. And those are all young professionals that could be working in Silicon Valley if they wanted to. Very diverse. We have aerospace here with Dassault Falcon Jet, and then we have lots of government jobs here. We are the state capital, so we have all of our state government here. We're also a major medical center, so all of our medical professionals train here. Our medical school for the state is here in Little Rock, so all of our large hospitals. On that note, things that we have coming now, they're announced they're building a new dental school here in Little Rock, so there's not a dental school in Arkansas currently. Also building a veterinarian school here in Little Rock. These are both going to be attached to another college that's here in Arkansas. So starting on a good foundation for those 2 schools. But that's another exciting move for Little Rock. So all these things are driving the workforce and bringing in younger workers, generating out workers from the medical school, for example, putting them out into the marketplace here. So we have a lot of young professionals. And I think that's why Forbes ranked us in the top 10 of places for young professionals to live.
Being the state capital there, yes, you have that base of government jobs, some of the private sector jobs you mentioned the expansion of medical. And, these are 2 areas, government and medical, that rarely contract very much, especially with the medical often growing. And then with the government jobs, with the state capital being there in Little Rock, those just aren't the type of jobs that are going to be outsourced. And they're also not going to move the capital from Little Rock to Pine Bluff, Arkansas anytime soon either. So you do have that base there. And Brian, you and I were looking at different media articles recently and studying more statistics. No one area has it all. Little Rock has a lot of advantageous drivers, especially a high ratio of rent income to purchase price for investors. And we'll get into that later. But really, with one of the statistics that we were consuming together, basically, if you think of it as gradients in an area's population growth and job growth, maybe let's think of 5 of them. There's high growth, there's slower growth, there's no change, there's slow decline, or there's fast decline. And of those 5, it seemed to be pointing to that second one, slow growth for the area.
Yes. I mean, we're a very linear market here. Our growth is consistent. We haven't had a major increase or a major dip. We're just very consistent and linear in our growth, but it is continuous. We've seen that happen with even with housing. We've seen a lot of permits increase in the last few years, more multifamily permits even than single family permits. And it kind of tells you the demand that's there for housing that rises along with the growth. We are in that category, I would say.
Yeah, that's right. When we think about slow population growth, obviously those people need to be housed somewhere. And in the past decade, you touched on it, to your point, both Little Rock and North Little Rock have had more multifamily built than they've had single family homes built. And nationally, we are just so undersupplied, depending on what numbers you look at. We're millions of housing units undersupplied nationally. How does that translate to the local picture there in central Arkansas, including Little Rock, as far as being oversupplied, adequately supplied, or undersupplied with housing?
Well, I think we're undersupplied with single family housing, for sure. And there's a real demand there. And there has been an increase in multifamily, and most of that multifamily increase is at the top of the market. So there's been a real shift in multifamily, and what maybe used to be an A-class multifamily building is now a B or a C, because new A-class has been built to replace it. So we've seen some shift there, but where the majority of the housing stock is coming from is the multifamily sector, and that puts more demand on the single family rentals. I mean, that is still a very desirable place. I think most anyone who lives in an apartment or has lived in an apartment aspire to eventually, have their own home or be within their own four walls in a yard that, they belongs to them or they control or rent or whatever else and have their own piece. So the demand stays there for single family rental, but there's not as much being built. So we've really seen an increase in our single family rental rates. I know there's been increases across the country in rental rates, but usually it's linear here. But, we've, with not a great big jump, but we've really experienced a significant jump over the last few years. And I think a lot of it is driven with the demand for the single family, and there's just only so much of it.
Now we think about investors. Of course, most of the investors that you provide product for come from out of state. They live in areas that aren't nearly as investor advantaged as Little Rock is, but that's about more than the numbers. Oftentimes it's about that local landlord-tenant law. I've got to say, it's been a while since I've consumed any material about this, but I remember in the past reading for years that oftentimes Arkansas comes in as one of the most landlord-friendly states.
That's correct. And it's been that way for a long time. Here, our process is very simple and it's very much in favor of the landlord. But here, an average eviction, if you get to that point of having to evict, typically it takes 30 days or less to actually get the tenant.
That's fast.
And less than $1,000. And that's hiring an attorney. So you're hiring an attorney. We have several that specialize here in the Little Rock area, for example. They can turn this thing around in about 30 days. And the process is it goes to an unlawful detainer. If you filed for eviction and the tenant hasn't followed the eviction process and hasn't followed the proper notices and the proper days to get out, then legally you can file a unlawful detainer. And once that process gets moving, and it moves pretty fast, a writ of possession is issued. And so at that point, the tenant is actually served by a police officer. And it's not a harsh dragging out with handcuffs, but they show up and generally escort them out of the place. It's pretty quick process overall, and it's backed up by law enforcement. So, but in no means is it a bullying or a brutal process or anything like that. And most residents here in Little Rock and Arkansas in general, that's the way it's been forever. They understand it. And usually when you serve an eviction notice, it means business. And most tenants know it means business and they just abide by it. So really, we don't have to enforce all that many evictions all the way through other than that we serve. So we serve evictions and they generally just get out. That's sort of the process and why Arkansas is known, as to being one of the most landlord-friendly states.
And it's been that way for quite a long time. Of course, we're highly interested in that long history of the law reinforcing landlord interests more so than tenant interests, since we are interested in being long-term investors. And when we talk about a metro area there in and around Little Rock, including their MSA, which includes North Little Rock and Conway, we sometimes want to think about, all right, now what parts of town would fit one's buy box, because even in an investor advantage place, you probably don't want class A plus single family homes because of those higher price points. Rents don't keep up proportionally. And then we also typically want to avoid D class areas. Those properties are shabby. They can't attract a rent paying tenant, and properties don't typically appreciate very well in those low end D class properties. So tell us about those areas and the criteria that fit your buy box that you know that investors want to put in their portfolio.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we really stick a lot into the B space. We're looking for kind of that working class tenant. They've got a good job. They are, blue collar. They're hardworking people. Generally, it's a family. Those are the areas where we're focused on. And we're not exclusively in Little Rock. As you mentioned, the metro area is about a 55-mile radius. There's about 1 million people within that radius of the metro area. And that encompasses other areas around us other than Little Rock. So the city of Little Rock, there's the city of North Little Rock, which is actually not just the north side of Little Rock. It's a separate city from Little Rock on the other side of the Sherwood, Cabot, Jacksonville, Conway, Benton, Bryant. All of these are communities, cities around us and joining Little Rock. We find rentals in those areas too. We target specific areas within those different cities where really that B-class property and that B-class tenant is looking to live. And so we're not just in Little Rock. We do venture out into some of these other areas.
Hey, we're talking about Little Rock, Arkansas, and the investor market there and its growth story. However, a slow growth story. Perhaps it's not growing as fast as some Floridian counties are, where you have a lot of foreign in-migration. You're going to have less foreign in-migration, for example, in Little Rock as compared to a lot of other places. We think about where the tenant income stream is going to come from. We've talked about that, all of those market drivers there. We start to think about, all right, well, what are the properties like and the prices and the rents? So can you tell us about the property types and then get into some of the important numbers for investors, Brian? And tell us about the quality of the renovation you do to get that property ready and make it effectively turnkey for investors. Tell us about the properties, the prices, and the rents.
We try to target mostly single family, and we do come across and dabble in some multifamily as well. And it's mostly smaller multifamily. So, anywhere from a duplex up to maybe a 20 or 30 unit complex, and fits within our box. But mostly we're focused on single family rentals. Our criteria is a 3-bedroom. Obviously, it's going to have a bath, but 3-bedroom, 2-bath is what we like. We do come across a lot of 3-bedroom, 1.5 baths. A lot of these homes were built in the 1960s, 1970s. Those homes are going to have, some of the more modern things, sheetrock versus plaster, Romex wire versus knob and tube. So, those are reasons why we want to focus on those 1960s, 1970s homes. Again, most of them are 3-bedroom, 1 to 2 baths. Most of them are around 1,200 square feet. And we do a fairly extensive remodel. We have a lot of boxes to check, but I would say our average home ends up with a new roof, new HVAC, new hot water heater, almost all new flooring. We always put in granite countertops. It's a staple in Little Rock. We find that just is a little bit of a wow factor compared to some other competitors out there and what they're offering as a result. So we pay attention to the finishes. We want all the hardware to match. We want all the light kits to match. We want everything to feel uniform. And our whole philosophy is we're trying to attract best quality tenants we can, but we want this to be, and hope this is the best rental property they've ever had as well. We want them to really fall in love with the property. And our number one goal is to retain tenants for as long as possible, because one of our biggest killers is turnover cost. So, if you lose a tenant, you've got to get that thing rent ready and put it back out on the market, and you've got to go through the whole process of finding a new tenant. So what we find is by providing a better product, it equals longevity of the tenant and them staying with us for a long time. And we typically start with an 18-month lease with escalators there with rent increases built in. But we find that we've keep tenants for 3 and 4 years, really good success with that. And I think a lot of it is due to the areas we pick and then the product that we put out in the market.
That's an excellent tenancy duration between 3 and 4 years with what you just laid out and described there with these fresh rehabs and even granite countertops in your single family homes. It kind of feels like your own. So therefore you want to be a tenant longer. And I think that tenant duration, as long as mortgage interest rates stay high, really is set up to lengthen because it's that much more difficult for a renter to go out and be a first-time home buyer. So therefore, if you put them in a rental that they're really happy in and get that right from the beginning that you guys do, it's unlikely that they're going to move into another rental because it's hard to do better than that. And it's also difficult for them to buy their own home due to this affordability constraint with the higher mortgage rates and higher prices. And when it comes to property prices, we listened to that media piece earlier where it was stated that the average or median home price, whatever it was, is about $200K. So tell us about what rent we would see with what price for one of your typical properties there that you prepare for investors.
A lot of our properties, once they've gone through the full turnkey renovation process and have been rented, they fall somewhere in a price range of, $115,000 to say $140,000. Maybe that's sort of our average sweet spot there. And those rents range anywhere from, $1,200 to $1,500 a month, just sort of depending, again, on the location, where it is and that sort of thing. So that median may be up there in the 200 range, but again, we're sort of focusing on the B-class areas. And so that's where our price points tend to fall, that sort of like, 120 to 140 price range.
And if you're new to the show and you're a listener in Brooklyn, New York, or Burbank, California, we're not talking about the 20% down payment amount here. We're talking about the complete purchase price amount with what we've discussed there. Tell us about your availability just in general over time.
The inventory here, not unlike a lot of places around the country, is very tight right now. I mean, a lot of people are staying in homes and real estate just isn't moving like it was. So we're still finding opportunities, but not like we were. And that goes all the way down to homeowner occupants. They're having a hard time finding places to buy because the sellers aren't selling. And that, I think, trickles down to tenants as well. There's just fewer places to rent. That's what we're seeing. There is less supply than demand. And when something is coming on the market, I mean, it's getting gobbled up pretty quick, be it a rental or a property to buy. So the demand is still very strong and inventory is low.
No, I'm curious, with prices that low, $150K or less, now that mortgage interest rates are higher, I think you know that I'm a leverage fan, and when you have ratios like that, you might be able to pay a higher interest rate, yet still have cash flow. But with higher interest rates, Brian, have you seen it where anyone is interested in making an all cash payment, a greater proportion of those people than there used to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're seeing people bring more money to the table for the down payment. We've seen quite a few cash buyers that we didn't normally see before. So yeah, people are just, using their resources to ride some of these things out, or there's understanding too that this interest rate level is probably short term. And so they're like, hey, let me go ahead and get this great property and hold on to it now, put a little bit more money into it, and I'll refinance it later. So we are seeing a lot of people think more with that type of strategy in mind.
I guess one approach is paying all cash now, and then mortgage rates come down to a level where an investor is comfortable, they could maybe do an 80% cash out refinance. In my experience, what I've found, though, is that usually when someone pays for a property all cash, no matter what mortgage rates do, they don't go back and get a mortgage on it. They just leave it paid all cash. That's what I always tend to see happen.
Absolutely. And that's not a wrong way to go at all. I tell you what, and with appreciation built in, and then all of the other tax write-off benefits and those types of things, I mean, it ends up being a great place to put your cash if you have your cash, if you look at the full picture of the return. So to your point, people who go there temporarily end up staying there.
Right. Yeah, it goes from temporary to permanent.
Yeah.
To keep that paid off condition, even though it probably doesn't make a lot of financial sense, but it can depend on one situation. Yeah. Well, in conclusion here, is there just anything else that an investor should know in general about the Little Rock market or Little Rock property or the particular renovations that you make to the property there?
One thing just to point out, kind of from an earlier part of our conversation about why, the city is great for young professionals and had that Forbes ranking. And, our cost of living here in Little Rock is 17% below the national average. So your money just goes further here, I believe. And I think that translates out right. And, and our unemployment is at around 2%. So it's a very low unemployment rate. So the cost of living is lower. Your dollars go farther. Your tenants here tend to be more stable. There's job opportunities for them. So, I think all of that builds into why Little Rock is a great investment market and why we see tenants stay in units for longer than their lease period. As far as availability and quality of renovations, I mean, we certainly have availability. We have deals popping up all the time. I mean, we're known for our renovations and being at the top end of our renovations. And a lot of our tenants come to us almost word of mouth. They've been in one of our rentals before with a friend or neighbor. And a lot of times they are knocking on our doors as we're renovating, asking, when is this going to be available for rent? So a lot of it's reputation of product out there, even among the tenant population, not just the buyers out there. So I think those are some of the things we have going for us here and continued on our journey here. We've been investing in Little Rock since 1997. So we've got a great track record here and a lot of great experience.
Yeah, your volume of repeat investors that want to keep buying there is really a testimony to what you're doing. Well, thanks so much for sharing this. It's really an opportunity a lot of people don't know about or a lot of people don't think about. It's hard to find a more investor advantage place than Little Rock, Arkansas, and surrounding Central Arkansas there. For you, the listener from GRE Marketplace, you'll see our Little Rock provider there or contact your investment coach. If you don't have an investment coach yet, you can visit gremarketplace.com/coach and pick your coach. Hey, it's been great chatting about Little Rock. Oh yeah, great chat about Little Rock. You know, one of the things that I visited while in Little Rock, it was the Clinton Presidential Library. It's worth checking out. But you know, the one thing that I did not see, despite all the memorabilia and historic tributes to Bill Clinton there was not one mention, nothing about Monica Lewinsky. I could not find one in the whole place. I guess it's his library and he'll be remembered how he wants to be. But yeah, these numbers really work for investors. $1,200 to $1,500 rent, renovations like what we discussed, and purchase prices of $115K to $140K. So you can start with one of those properties or get a pack of these smaller sized single family rentals, and then they can manage them all for you long term. They seek tenants for life there, quote unquote. So we're talking about working class, stable families. Now, here in Central Arkansas, that should not be confused with higher priced areas out in Northwest Arkansas. Okay, the provider and I were talking off air about a story that's emblematic of that area, Northwest Arkansas. A school teacher priced out of Bentonville. She couldn't find housing there, so she lives in a Fayetteville rental and commutes into Bentonville. Okay, those are both Northwest Arkansas cities. Of course, Bentonville is famously known as the Walmart headquarters. So we're not talking about Northwest Arkansas here, which is an area that just doesn't work as well for long-term rentals as Little Rock, Central Arkansas. Forbes even highlighting that Little Rock ranks as one of the top 10 places for young professionals to live and pointing out those super low house prices. Little Rock should be considered to see if it fits into your portfolio as a stable place with some of America's very best cash flows. What you can do is from GRE Marketplace, you'll see our Little Rock provider there. If you want to connect with the provider yourself, you can also go directly to gremarketplace.com/Little Rock, or if you prefer, contact your GRE investment coach. It is free at gremarketplace.com/coach. Until next week, when I'll be back to help you build real estate wealth, I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.